Welcome to another Gamma Partner Artist Feature interview. Today we speak with Tammy. Tammy speaks on all things moving from Argentina to Australia, the impact that has had on her creativity, arts, culture, her job as a vet, and how that sometimes translates and has been translating across to her artwork, and how she went from being a very particular figurative artist into becoming an abstract artist, and all that encompassed. I think you're going to enjoy this conversation. Very excited to have Tammy with us today, another Gamma Partner Artist for another Partner Artist Feature podcast. I love chatting with the artists. Tammy and I, luckily enough, met very fortuitously on X, and now she's a Gamma Partner Artist and has released gorgeous work on Gamma and on Bitcoin. And we've been lucky enough to meet in the same city. She lives in Melbourne, even though she hails all the way from Argentina. So she's got quite the story. So enough from me. Tammy, welcome. Introduce yourself.
Fred.
Tell your story. Go as far back as you like. You know, could be when you first picked up a crayon or a pencil up until now.
Well, yeah, I think my journey starts since I was like in kindergarten, basically. Drawing animals. I was like really attracted to animals. Back in my primary school, the teachers made me do the drawings during my art classes because they thought that my parents did them. And then, well, I went to high school thinking, what am I going to do with my life? And I said, okay, I like animals, I like art, but I think I pursue like more like a scientific career. So I went into vet school, but in the meantime, I always continued to paint and develop my artistic style. But I think it was back in like I usually started like maybe doing more realistic things. I love painting horses, dogs, animals. I was like kind of like really obsessed with details. But then around like 2018, I wanted like to try abstract. So I went to a workshop with a really good artist back in Argentina. Like she's really talented. She's kind of like I would say she's kind of like my sensei, to be honest. Um, so I studied with her doing some like doodles, drawings, and thinking, oh, like this is like I didn't like feel comfortable at all at the beginning. Um, but like she was really kind, she was really good, she was really encouraging. And also what I loved about her was kind of like she started to criticize my work. Like usually people say, oh, this is lovely. But like I wanted someone to actually say, okay, yeah, this is a good, but you can go through this line, you can improve this. So yes, like she was kind of like, I think she's my mentor. I still talk to her from time to time. And she told me like you have to learn not only from the drawings, you have to learn from other artists, you have to train your eyes, go to museums, watch this movie about this artist, like go and read this book. So like I think it wasn't like only just um in there in the moment that I was painting, but also like she covered like the whole aspect of like the artist lifestyle as well. um and then, well, I started to get into Bitcoin. The same, like trading and all those things. I will never forget. I regret myself not buying Bitcoin when it was $800, but well, here we are. And then as I got to know ordinals here, like around, I don't know, when I came to here to Australia, thanks to my partner. And I found like a really good area to develop myself. I think the community is lovely. And yes, I think like my art evolved from 2018 to now. Usually it's mainly focused on lines, watercolors. I love the randomness that water creates. Also, like I've been trying to use digital platforms as well, but doesn't have like the same taste. Like it doesn't have the same effect, and that's what I like. I like to work with like stains that appear random. I just like wet the whole paper, put some colors in there, and then let's see what happens. So I started like that, and then I draw lines on top of those things, and it was kind of like also like a meditative state for me. And I think now my work evolved, and I usually struggle a lot between these two passions that I have, like vet science, and on the other hand, art. It's kind of like these two things can't match. It's kind of this is like a structure, data, really like a kind of like biological black or white thing. It's like either the animal is alive or dead, and on the other side, it's like how this abstract part of my life, like creating things. And I couldn't find a way to match them until, well, it's been like, honestly, to me, it's been recently since I started like delving more into, I don't know, like cancer, mitosis, like abnormalities in the cell transformation. Now I'm into more like cytology. So I found like the way to match those two worlds, which I honestly struggle a lot with that.
Fascinating story. I have so many questions to ask. The first one will be, how did you find that transition? You said through your sensei back in Argentina, but how did you find the transition from more figurative art to abstract art? It's like a vast change in style.
Yes. I remember when it started. I went to an expo, and I fell in love with one artist that she did more like she painted on a mirror, and she kind of like emulated some fable like animals and a lot of colors. So, and I think that was a moment because I wanted to try something different, like something like I wanted to like let my brain play a bit, no, because like when you're doing like some realistic work, it was like, okay, yeah, I love the end result, right? And of course I realized that people like usually they like the common folks like they really love those things. Oh, like this like as like if you make it as much realistic as you can, you have like the best feedback ever, right? But I say like, is this like what I like? I felt myself like I was kind of like in a box, kind of like you have these limitations. So basically, what you have to do is just to uh, paint this as accurate as possible, and that's the end. And on the other side, it's kind of like with the abstract art, it was more like I was starting to play with my ideas and my brain. I was like really shy at the beginning because it's like a new world. Uh, I was like even scared of failing or like doing things wrong. Um, but I think yeah, it was kind of like a whole journey into those things. So then I found I started like to go to this type of more abstract expos series. And there was one basically I said, okay, like, I can give it a try. I can like because it was like the type of person that thought I maybe like when I was I don't know 15 years old. It's like, oh, this is kind of like a white canvas and you have like a blue circle, like anyone can do that. But then I started to understand the process. Like it's not that it's like kind of like an introspection, it's a work, it's like a lot of research that you do, and then you end up synthesizing your idea in a blue circle on a white canvas. So now I think it's amazing.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting way to explain it. And you mentioned it's quite an introspective process. What has that been like for you? How do you find sort of searching within yourself for that creativity and then what the end result may be?
Well, I think it reflects a lot on how you're feeling. Uh, Maybe now that I pay attention to some of my previous arts, it's like, oh, well, like now I can see the pattern. Maybe like on the moment you actually don't know a lot. Um, but there are like two pieces that resonate a lot with me. And funny enough, they're called Mutation and Invasion. And that was like, they were done in between 2018 to 2019. And that was the moment where my mom had cancer, was diagnosed with cancer. So I was like really kind of like obsessed with all these kind of like cell abnormalities. And even like you can see in my pieces of work as well. Like you can see like all these lines, like this kind of like lines trying to bait other structures. So I think it's related more to how I'm feeling in the moment. And there are the times that they are kind of like, as I said, like meditative. I It's like a really good way to get in the zone, just focus on what I'm doing, live in the present, which sometimes it's hard. The same happens with me when I run. Like it's kind of like I get into that zone and you just are there in the present, not thinking or worried about anything else.
Yeah, like you said, that meditative state or feeling in that zone or feeling in that flow. You said then that you run, you obviously create, and you're a vet. That's a busy lifestyle. Do you find that like you said with your recent stuff, and we'll look at it soon, that study that you've done in biology and cytology and understanding animals more at a cellular level, has that study come across into your art because of your prior experience, or do you think that it's just something that you might have gotten towards painting anyway?
No, I think definitely. Now I can tell you that it's like my art style is definitely marked by my background. I think if I wasn't like into vet science, like if I didn't start like taking samples from patients and looking under the microscope, it's like that's something that I would never have done, to be honest.
And it's certainly an interesting place to find inspiration.
Yeah, it's kind of like I'm transforming like diseases and horrible things into colors and cells and like trying to maybe I'm trying to make people fall in love with the teeny tiny world of microscopical creatures in there.
That's a really fascinating way to look at it. Do you think that art is a really interesting and maybe more, what's the right word here? Almost an easier way for people to visualize those sorts of things? It's quite unique.
I think yes. I think it's a way, maybe like people that are not related to the field, it's a way to like maybe start looking into, okay, like what is this? Like, what is cytology? And maybe they start Googling and they can see like certain patterns and they can even get inspired as well with those things. And they can say, okay, this is like a whole world that I had no idea about. And I think it's really inspiring. I think nature itself is really inspiring.
Yeah, and like you said, all the way back in preschool or kindergarten or early childhood years, the teachers were wanting to check that you were actually doing those drawings, which means that you've been, more skilled at it or highly skilled at it since a young age. Do you remember loving artwork that young, and then has it been part of that path, or has it sort of come back to you?
No, I remember it. And I even have like a funny anecdote because I love creating, but at the same time, I didn't like boundaries. So I think I was no, I was like maybe 16 years old. So of course, like like me and my best friend were like our teacher's pet, as they would say. Like he loved us because we were really high skilled and everything. But he gave us like this kind of like, task like like how to like the color wheel and paint kind of like the transition from yellow to I don't know, I think it's blue, I don't even remember, and I hated those things. So it's funny because I like my in my schedule like my notes were like 4 4 4 10 because like he even like was really angry with us, like I can't believe that my two best students are like painting like this. But I said like, well, I hate this, like I hate kind of like painting blocks of colors, like not creating anything, because sometimes I like even do my own thing. And he said, no, this is wrong. But yes, I think I always enjoyed art classes. Like we had even like ceramics and kind of like, I think like I'm lucky enough to say that in my high school I had like there was like a whole art department, so like I could develop those things as well.
And growing up in Argentina, were you exposed to the arts? Did your parents foster it? Did you draw any inspiration from where you're from?
Um, Look, I think I started to get more inspiration when I grew older, and I started to get more like into the art world. As I said, like when I was like after I was 18 years old. Before that, to be honest, no. And I think it's kind of like there's not much art culture. Like I compare Argentina to Melbourne, and I think like people here over there are like more connected to art. I think like even the government, like you can see like art everywhere. That's why I love Melbourne. um, People collecting art. Even I was having like a discussion with my former boss. He's like an art collector, like and we like spend hours talking about like different artists and different things. And I think those things in Argentina don't happen at all. Maybe it might be related because that type of thing is, I think it's first of all it's expensive, and I think it doesn't have the popularity, and it's like it's not embedded in the culture, unfortunately, I would say.
Mm. And so has living in Melbourne been impactful in your art? Have you been more creative here?
Yes, yes, I love it. I think Melbourne, I see it as a city that is more welcoming to artists. Uh, One of the reasons that I also like chose to go into vet medicine was mainly because in Argentina it's really impossible to sustain your life as an artist. And probably, I don't know what, I don't know if I would be able to be here if I wasn't because of my vet degree, because I validated my degree here. So now I'm working as a vet, but I can also do this thing that I love a lot. And as I always say, like in the long future, I will retire as an artist, not as a vet. But I think galleries are really, really accessible, really friendly. Sometimes like I walk in, I get inside, and I start talking to the curators in there. They give me a lot of insights, and they're not expecting you to buy things. Like it's more like they want to show you, and they invite you to events as well. There was one that we went, and it was an artist that he had like his own studio, so we could have like even like a private conversation, kind of like with the thing that we're doing here online, the same thing but in a physical space, and it was amazing, to be honest.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, pardon the repetition of the word, but impactful, particularly on anyone, but particularly on an artist. And you mentioned earlier that your sensei, gave you critiques, said this can be better, that can be better. Yeah, which is definitely something. It's something that's echoed across a few of the artists that I've spoken to in terms of what they've found really helpful. What do you think that teacher in I guess specifically gave you, or the critiques or even the advice they gave you that stuck with you?
I think that we are all a work in progress. We have to learn from other artists, train ourselves all the time. And I think it's, yeah, what I value the most was like that feedback, because sometimes like if people say that this fun is beautiful or whatever, but then you don't have room to improve, or you don't know, like you kind of like you don't know where you're stepping, basically, because you can't make how would you say it, kind of like a canvas, like it's a white canvas, and that you don't know, like it's kind of like you don't have a map, and you don't know where you're going, basically. And maybe if you have like with these guidelines, it's like I know where to improve. For example, at the beginning, of course, my lines were really stiff, and then now I realize as well, I will never forget that I'm really comfortable like in small pieces of paper, because it's kind of like my sort of my comfort zone. So my teacher started to tell me, okay, like, but you can like move this, like make the same kind of like scale that you are doing like in a small piece of paper, but do it like on a big one. Like you don't have to make a bigger line. So those are the things that still resonate with me nowadays. Like I like always like have her in my head, like saying, okay, like you can improve this, you can improve the other thing. And I sometimes even email her with my pieces of work.
That's great. Have you shown her or spoken to her about the fact that you're tokenizing and digitizing your work on
Yes.
Bitcoin?
Yes, and she's like really excited. She doesn't understand much, but like she's really excited about it. And it's like, oh, I can't believe what you're doing. And like she's really happy as well for that.
Absolutely. And I remember when we caught up for coffee, you said, your parents are like proud of you. You've got your work on the internet. They don't get it, but it's a nice thing.
Yes. Yeah, like I think like my father's kind of like, oh wow, well that's good, but like I think like he can't imagine. I don't know. I think it's I'm questioning myself, like, would that happen to us when we're like 70 years old and our kids tell us something that we can't actually picture? Like, I want to think that I don't, but I don't know.
I agree. It's hard to know. One thing I am sure of is that I've posted about it before. We're right on the forefront of it, but it's going to be so different, for the future generations, and we're kind of setting it up for them massively. And that's why it's fascinating that you're preserving your artwork on Bitcoin, because it's going to be around in however many years for people to see. How does that feel as an artist?
Oh, I think it's amazing. And it's like the same is it replicates like a biological pattern of an infection. So basically, a viral infection, you just put one seed and then it reproduces in a lot of nodes in other parts of the world, which is amazing as well. So like my little cytology samples are infecting other computers, but in a good way, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really fascinating way to think about it. Back from my knowledge of biology days, is that called mitosis, where they like split and replicate and things?
So yes, mitosis is when they split and replicate. Yeah, and then meiosis is basically like what happens when you have a baby. So like it's kind of like the mixture of two different genes. But mitosis is what happens all the time in our skin cells, all the time.
Yeah, you certainly have that. It's so fascinating to have that biological knowledge. And you said before, I found it fascinating that in your job, obviously your job is wide and varied, but it's a little bit more black and white. It's like potentially a dog, for example, or whatever animal, but a dog survives or it doesn't. It's a little bit more black and white. Whereas with art, it's more open-ended. How do you find that shift in mindset when you're creating? How do you know when your piece is done, for example?
Oh, I think that's that's the hardest question ever. I think you never know. Sometimes what I do is I think it's kind of like, okay, I think I'm done, but I always feel tempted to go like a little bit more, right? So I leave the piece I leave the piece there, and maybe I go back like a week later and I just take a fresh look at it and say, okay, is this end, like is it finished, or do I need like to add more details? I think that's my way to go with that, because if not, I think it will never end. And then I ended up like there were lots of pieces that I like didn't ended up liking because of that.
Totally. Yeah, coming back at it with fresh eyes. Or do you get your partner to cast an eye over it and get feedback? How do you get your feedback?
Well, yes. Sometimes I ask him, I say, okay, what do you feel about this? Like, what is like the general feeling that you have? And sometimes like he even tells me like, well, I think like this part is like, I don't know, like it gives me like weird vibes. And then it's like, oh, let's see. And like there are things that I never pay attention to, and I think I really enjoy that as well. Because sometimes like you are so focusing your things, and it's good to have like someone that has like a completely different background to you, just give you like a appreciation of what you're doing.
100%. And you mentioned that you create physically and then
Mm.
obviously scan it or photograph it, you can tell me, to digitize it. How do you find that, bringing it from the physical to the digital world and the challenges of getting it within the file size constraints of Bitcoin, but still looking good? Have you learned a fair bit since you started doing that?
Yes, I think like, honestly my go-to now, because we studied. I remember that I was listening to a previous chat that you have with an artist that he was a compressionist, and I was laughing because it's like I think like that's the thing that we struggle, like all of us struggle with. However, now I just put it on Gamma and they just go, and I like the end result, because in the beginning I was kind of like compressing it myself, and it didn't look right, like the result didn't look right. And I then like I did it like with just like with your basically with your what is like feature, or I
Mm.
don't know how is it called. Um and I think I like the result, because like then you zoom in and it has like a really good quality. I think I try to make a good scan, try to reduce the quality, but at least like keeping the overall resolution. But I don't do much. I'm not like a compressionist geek, I would say. I just try to like do the basics and see how they work, and I'm really happy with the results, to be honest.
Yeah, well, your art looks great, so you're doing a good job with, however you're putting it on. And speaking of, let's let's have a look at some of your work. Let's have a look at some of the first works that you did, and then we'll have a
Mm,
look at the prints that you've made since becoming a partner artist. So back when you got started,
wow.
these were your first few pieces, and you created, people could mint editions of them as well. And we can see a lot of what you've been talking about in terms of lines and watercolor, and like you said, randomness. And yeah, like you can, if you want, tell us more about the individuals, the specifics about each piece, but or you can just talk about your process and what it was like and how that, what these pieces are about, etc. Go for it.
So, well, yeah, first of all, like I see them, I think I still love them. That's a really good thing. And for example, this collection, I was kind of like really more inspired into thoughts. So what it gives is kind of like how our thought process goes. Sometimes it can be messy, sometimes it's more like linear, or sometimes like you see that it ends up like having like a nice shape. But for example, on the last one, the red one, it's more like chaotic. So I would like to try to picture all those things in this collection. And that was resonating with me the most, basically, I would say.
And your color choice, you got those sort of like softer kind of palette colors that you can see like on the far left. It gives me almost like a Caribbean ocean type look. Are there colors? Are there there color palettes that you choose? Are there things that stand out to you specifically?
Yes, I would say, for example, the last one. I'm more blue girl, so I love blues, greens, all those types of colors. But then I wanted to challenge myself. Okay, like if I say like if I want to make like a chaotic mind, I will go with red. So then I stepped out of my comfort zone and created that, and then like I love the end result. Sometimes it's that like pushing myself to my limits as well.
Absolutely. And I was actually reading a paper on psychology and color theory the other day, which prompted me to post about it. And that's why I'm asking about it now. Do you find that the colors you choose in a piece are to do with the mood or the theme, or is it a bit more random than that, or is it on purpose?
I think like I usually choose them, at least I say okay, like I try to say okay, how am I feeling, and then I try to represent that feeling with my colors. And they are usually blues. Like it's not that I'm sad, but I don't know. I then like, there are like some colors that resonate with me a lot. Blue is one of those. I just love it. I just kind of blues, violet, all those types of like how do you say like uh, my English is not good
Shades
now.
or hues?
Shades, thank you. That.
Yeah.
um, but yes, I usually try to choose it, and sometimes look, most of the time it's on purpose. But there are some times that I just sit there and paint as like, okay, I just grab some colors and just paint. Or there are like some days that okay, like I'm like I want to try this another set of colors because I've never done them before. So that's why I think like it depends on my mood. I would
Yeah.
say.
Fair enough. What about when you go out and buy them? There must be some kind of intention when you
Yes,
pick them up.
yes. Mainly with the Chinese things because with the watercolors I have like a set palette. But with Chinese things I really go for them. For example, I usually like gold and silver. So I have like those two because I think they add a little bit of kind of like a little bit of a spark to the whole piece. Um, and sometimes I also like try to work myself with what is called positive limitations. So I say, okay, like I have to work with three colors and that's it. So that's how I like also to enhance your creativity at the same time.
For sure. Well, like you said, there's, that you can see that gold thread across Wormhole and Alpha Centauri, and they were your first couple of prints. Yeah, talk to us about these, and then we can see that you dropped it today. Sample
Yes,
N1, which is more of that Cytology looking artwork, which again
exactly.
stands out to me because you know, prior to working in this space and prior to being a primary school teacher, also studied in health science. So speaks to me there. But yeah, tell us about these pieces. And it's interesting. Your line work is very detailed. It's they're each quite different, but you can see a cohesion, particularly across Dusk, Wormhole, and Alpha Centauri. But yeah, talk to us about this work.
So well, Alpha Centauri and Wormhole, they're both like part of my cosmic collection. So I think I tried like to make kind of like sets of collections, right? So at that time I was like more into the space and I wanted to recreate that interstellar vibe with my lens. So I said, okay, like I want to create kind of like a nebulosa or something like that. And I wanted to do like one stain and then play with that stain with the lines basically to find a cohesion. And with the wormhole, the same thing. It's kind of like okay, like I want to connect these two, and that's why I came up with that name. And as I said, like my work is kind of like if you analyze my whole um, all my pieces, it's kind of like it has kind of like this obsessive thing I'm like obsessed with details. So I think like all these like teeny tiny lines, they represent my inner obsession probably with things. Um, the same with dusk. Like I wanted to say, okay, I wanted to create an abstraction of this moment of the day. How can I do it? This is like an old piece of work that I did back in Argentina, but I love it, and that's why I wanted like to be. I wanted to for it to stay in the whole in Bitcoin. I think it deserves a space in there. And the same, it was kind of like I was playing. Okay, I want to play with two colors. How can I represent this time of the day in the most abstract way possible? And that's why I came with this set of words. Like you have the blue, you have the orange at the same time, like these lines that represent kind of like the shadow, kind of like the earth, I would say. And then finally, my last one is sample number one, which I'm really proud of. I love it. And I think because I think I'm really happy with this one, mainly because it represents this final cohesion that I was talking about, like this final struggle that I was having in terms of how can I get these two things like merged together. And I think this is the final communion, like trying to show part of my lifestyle, part of my life and my work into art. Um, and yeah, so there basically it is a cytology sample. You can even Google like Google cytology, you would see this, but just I wanted to create like more vibrant colors at the same time. So the lines, of course, they're an abstraction, but they could represent some bacteria. So the cells are mainly inspired in our white blood cells. If you would see them, they are more lymphocytes. And then like all those lines, usually bacteria are more like in terms of like little dots or little dashes. So they start as dashes and then they end up appearing as lines at the end.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you say that. There's always, well, not always, sometimes there's a mathematical component to artwork, and now we're hearing a scientific component. And what I find interesting, and I might just be picking up on it, is that you said the line work is almost harking back to your attention to detail days. So it's almost like a little bit of when you were drawing figurative work creeping into your abstract work, which is an interesting, like you said, introspective thought that you just had.
Exactly. I agree with you. I think it's kind of like maybe that little obsession was always there. And now that I think of it, when I am focused on details, is the moment that I'm the most calm, I would say, or I'm really focused. So I think that's why I like being like paying attention to those little small lines, or back in my time doing like I don't know, like painting the fur of a dog, because I even remember when I was doing that figurative art, like the moment that I hated the most was like the drawing, like the whole thing. Like I enjoy like doing the shadowing and doing the details. Like I hated like doing like the first part of the artwork, which is like something that you inevitably need to do anyways.
For sure. And you mentioned that you do create physically and then, digitize it. What do you do with your physical artwork? Do you feel attached to the physical pieces? Do you put them up? Do you gift them?
Uh,
Do you
I
do you sell them?
I have them. I have them with me. I don't know. I was thinking on some, like maybe burn some of them. I'm still not ready. But I think I see many artists do that, and I think that it's really like, I love that. Or even, for example, painting in, I don't know, in mirrors or like other types of material that then like you have to clean them off. I think that's something I would like to try. I'm not ready yet. I'm still hang on to all my pieces. Like maybe like I don't know. In the future, I will just do like a little exhibition or something like that as well.
Oh, I would love to see that. I don't want you to burn them, but obviously it's the art the artist's choice always. They should be the ones in control. And like you said, this recent piece is based on cytology, but how do you decide what's next? What are you drawing inspiration kind of always? Is it from more from work at the moment, or is this just a place that you wanted to go?
I think it's a constant search. Now I'm realizing that, right? It's kind of like you have you may have one style, but I think it's where you get inspiration from. Because, for example, another thing that I love is the mushrooms, kind of like the mycelium, right? Like how this type of microorganism kind of like branch themselves, and they do, like if you Google that as well, it's kind of, you would find like such beautiful things. Um, so I think it's, yeah, I think it's sometimes I think like the theme just encounters me, and I'm just the vessel that shows it to the world. To be honest.
I really, I really like the way that you put that. It's a really interesting way of thinking of it. And on a slightly different note, how have you found putting your work on Bitcoin, but then not just that, the fact that you have a global audience and that artists, need to be on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, and post and show things off and market yourself in a way. Obviously, at Gamma, we do our absolute best to help with that process, but also it comes down to the artist. How's that part of your life been as a digital artist now?
I think I'm still learning. I'm learning a lot. But what I found, I was really scared at the beginning because, as you can say, like I don't have many followers yet, hopefully. But at the beginning, I was really scared because it's kind of like I felt lame. It's like, oh, like I feel like an idiot, like posting about what I do. Like, why would people care? But I ended up finding like a really welcoming community. Like, I honestly, I love Twitter community. I'm only like mainly on Twitter. I have my Instagram, but honestly, I don't like do a lot of things on Instagram. And I also think you like GAM as well helps me heaps with this. I feel like, for example, like allowing me to have like this space for people, so that people can hear a little bit about my story. Like I did like some also like meetings with Empress Trash, which I really loved as well. She helped me a lot with to create my profile, my portfolio. I think you are doing a lot of things for artists, and maybe like if I wasn't like if I wasn't part of the Gamma ecosystem, probably it would be harder for me. I think like you're really helping a lot, especially with like emerging artists as well.
Well, we appreciate that, and we can't, we don't have a platform. We're nothing without incredible artists such as yourself. Yeah, you mentioned Empress Trash. She's a great,
I love her.
sensei as well. How was that
Yes.
call?
Oh, it was amazing. It was amazing because the same, she gave me like really, she criticized me, but in a positive way. So I love that. Basically, like, maybe like I love people to criticize me, but I think it's, as I said, like I now know where to aim. I now have kind of like some guidelines in terms of, okay, what things do I need to work with? What things do I need to improve? Because as I said, like she's a really um talented artist, so then I can know like she has a lot of experience with the thing. So it's better to learn from someone that actually like is really comfortable in their space and with what they do. And I don't know, I just really enjoyed the talk with her as well.
Absolutely, and it sounds like that would be a key piece of advice of yours, is to seek feedback and make connections and reach out to people. What else would you advise someone who has never gotten into this space, who might be looking at it, or even like an emerging artist or whoever that is just putting art out there and tokenizing it?
I think I would say you don't have to be scared. You like people are really like everybody is very reachable. They are very friendly. So if you have questions, you can even like send DMs to anyone. I said like I said like I talked with a lot of artists, and they were all of them. They were lovely. Like Pavel was amazing. With Zoe, we sometimes talk as well. Raylan as well gave me some feedback. So I think like everybody is really like they're really genuine. Like they don't like they make a space for you, and they like try to help you with the questions that you have. So I think you just have to go and jump yourself into the pool.
I think that's a great place to finish off. We love your work. I love your work. I've collected your work, as you know. So really looking forward to everything that you do with us on Gamma. And thank you so much for your time today, Tammy.
Thank you, Red. Okay, have a lovely day today.